Dr. Vexhai pressed his crystal fingers against the cold metal wall of the research station. His body shook with fear as the sound of laser fire echoed through the corridors outside. The delicate blue glow of his skin flickered like a dying star. Around him, 200 Zilani scientists huddled in their biolabs, their tall, thin bodies trembling with each explosion that rocked their home. The Zilani were not fighters. They had never been fighters. Their world was peaceful, their gravity, light, their bodies built for thinking and creating, not for war. Their bones were like glass, their muscles weak, their skin as fragile as flower petals. They had spent 300 years perfecting medicine and science, while other species fought wars among the stars. Now those wars had come to them. "Send the message again," Vexhai whispered to his assistant, Dr. Melthan. The younger Zilani's hands shook as she worked the communication console. Her fingers moved across the controls like water, each movement careful and precise despite her terror. "Broadcasting on all Alliance emergency channels," she said. Her voice was like music, even when filled with fear. "The nearest patrol should receive it in 6 hours." 6 hours. Vexhai looked at the sealed door of their lab. The Krillian raiders had been aboard for 2 hours already. They were taking their time, moving through the station like hunters stalking prey. The reptilian warriors were in no hurry. They knew the Zilani could not fight back. The research station orbited the gas giant Kepler 442b like a small moon. It was beautiful, all curves and flowing lines, built more like art than architecture. The Zilani had designed it to study the strange bacteria that lived in the planet's upper atmosphere. Those tiny life forms had led to the greatest discovery in Zilani history, a cure for the withering plague. The plague had been killing billions across Alliance space for 8 months. Whole worlds had gone dark. The disease attacked the genetic, improvements that made each species perfect for their home worlds. It turned their greatest strengths into weaknesses, their bodies destroying themselves from within. But the Zilani had found an answer in the most unlikely place. The bacteria, floating in Kepler 442b's clouds, carried something special, something that could stop the plague and save the galaxy. The Krillians knew this. That was why they had come. Vexhai had watched their ships arrive 3 hours ago. 7 vessels, black and sharp like flying knives. They had not tried to talk or negotiate. They had simply attacked, their weapons tearing through the station's gentle defenses like paper. The Krillians were everything the Zilani were not. They came from a world of high gravity and endless war. Their bodies were thick and strong, covered in scales that could stop bullets. They lived for battle and conquest. To them, the peaceful Zilani were nothing more than prey. "The messages, transmitting," Melthan said. "Alliance Command should send help soon." Vexhai nodded, but he knew the truth. The Alliance was fighting the plague on 1,000 worlds. Every ship, every soldier, every resource was stretched thin. A single research station was not their priority, even if it held the cure that could save them all. The sound of laser fire grew closer. The Krillians were working their way through the station level by level. They killed any Zilani who tried to run and captured those who surrendered. Vexhai had seen it on the security feeds before the cameras went dark. The raiders were not just here to steal the research. They wanted to make sure no one else could use it. Someone was paying them to let the galaxy die. 400 light-years away, Captain Sarah Chen finished her 3rd cup of coffee and stared at the star charts on her ship's main screen. The cargo hold of the Defiance Rest was packed with mining equipment bound for the outer colonies. It was boring work, but it paid well, and her crew needed the money. Chen was not what most people pictured when they thought of a starship captain. She was short and stocky, her brown skin marked with scars from 20 years of dangerous work. Her left arm was cybernetic, replaced after an accident in the asteroid mines of Titan. Her black hair was streaked with gray, and her dark eyes held the hard look of someone who had seen too much. Her ship was not much to look at either. The Defiance Rest had been built as an industrial hauler, designed to carry heavy loads between mining stations and factory worlds. Chen had bought it cheap and modified it for long-range freight runs. It was ugly and loud, But it was fast and reliable, Captain, called Rodriguez from the navigation station. The older man had served in the Earth Defense Force before joining Chen's crew. His voice carried the sharp tone of someone used to military precision. I'm picking up something strange on the emergency channels. Chen walked over to look at his screen. The signal was weak and broken, filled with static and interference. The translation software was struggling to make sense of it, displaying fragments of text that appeared and vanished like ghosts. Distress call, Rodriguez said. But it's not human. The computer can't figure out the language. Chen frowned. Human. Ships had been exploring this part of space for only 5 years. They were still the new kids in the galaxy, not even full members of the Alliance yet. Most alien species ignored them or treated them like barbarians from a death world, which Chen supposed was not entirely wrong. Can you get a location? She asked. Rodriguez worked his controls for several minutes. System Kepler 442, about 4 hours away if we push the engines hard. That's not our route, said Murphy, the chief engineer. The big Irishman looked up from his own console with concern. And pushing the engines that hard could burn them out. Chen studied the broken message. Even through the static and translation errors, she could see the universal distress markers. Someone was in trouble. Someone was asking for help. It's not our fight, said Torres, the ship's medic. The former army doctor was cleaning her instruments at the medical station. We're not military. We're not even supposed to be in this sector. Chen nodded. Torres was right. They were just a freight crew hauling mining gear. They had no business getting involved in alien conflicts. Earth had made it clear that human merchants should avoid trouble and focus on building peaceful relationships. But the distress signal kept repeating. Someone out there was dying while she stood in her cargo hold and did nothing. Rodriguez, she said. How many people could fit on a station in that system? The navigator checked his files. The computer says it's a research facility. Maybe 200 or 300 beings. 300 lives. Chen had lost friends in mining accidents, had seen good people die because help arrived too late. She knew what it felt like to be trapped and afraid while time ran out. Murphy, she said, can the engines handle a 4-hour sprint? The engineer thought for a moment. Aye, Captain. Might need some repairs after, but they'll hold. Chen looked around at her crew. 43 men and women who had followed her, from the dangerous mining operations of the outer system to the even more dangerous work of independent freight running. They were not heroes. They were not soldiers. They were just people trying to make a living in a hostile universe. But they were human. Set course for Kepler 442, Chen ordered. Maximum burn. Are you sure about this, Captain? Torres asked. Chen watched the distress signal continue to repeat on Rodriguez's screen. Somewhere out there, people were going to die if no one came to help them. The Alliance might send ships eventually, but eventually might be too late. Someone's in trouble, she said. That's enough. The Defiance Rest turned away from its planned route and jumped to hyperspace, racing toward a system where desperate people waited for salvation that might never come. The Defiance Rest dropped out of hyperspace like a falling stone. Captain Chen gripped her command chair as the ship shuddered from the rough exit. Through the main screen, she could see the Zilani research station spinning slowly in the darkness. Half of its elegant curves were dark, and streams of frozen atmosphere leaked from dozens of holes in its hull. 7 Krillian warships surrounded the station like wolves around wounded prey. Their black hulls gleamed with weapon ports and armor plating. Each ship was 3 times the size of Chen's converted hauler, built for speed and destruction. Incoming transmission, Rodriguez announced. His fingers moved quickly over his controls. It's on a military frequency. The main screen flickered, then showed the bridge of the nearest Krillian vessel. The captain was a massive reptilian creature, with golden scales and red eyes. Scars covered his thick neck, and metal spikes decorated his battle armor. When he spoke, his voice was like grinding stone. Unknown vessel, you are trespassing in a military operation zone. Identify yourself and state your business or prepare to be destroyed. Chen stood up slowly. She had dealt with bullies before, in the mining stations and freight yards of human space. The words might be different, but the tone was always the same. "This is Captain Sarah Chen of the merchant vessel Defiance Rest," she replied. "We received a distress call from this location. Are you conducting rescue operations?" The Krillian's eyes narrowed. His forked tongue flicked out to taste the air, a gesture that somehow managed to be both alien and threatening. "I am War Chief, Thaklon of the Krillian Republic. This station has been seized for harboring criminals and illegal research. You will leave immediately or be classified as hostile." Chen looked at the damaged station. Through the holes in its hull, she could see lights moving in the corridors. The Krillians were still aboard, still hunting. If this was a legitimate military operation, why were they taking so long? Why were they being so careful with a station full of scientists? "We're here to help," Chen said. "If there are injured people on that station, my crew can assist with medical aid." Thaklon's laugh was like breaking glass. "You? Help?" He leaned forward, studying Chen through the screen. "What world spawns such small, soft creatures? You look like prey animals that learn to walk upright." Behind Chen, Murphy muttered something uncomplimentary about reptilian intelligence. Torres checked her weapon even though they were still talking. Rodriguez was already calculating attack vectors, his military training taking over. "This is your final warning," Thaklon continued. "Leave now or my ships will turn you into space dust." Chen looked at her crew. They were waiting for her decision. 43 people against 7 warships. It was suicide. It was insane. It was exactly the kind of stupid, heroic gesture that had gotten humans in trouble since they first looked up at the stars. "Negative," Chen said. "We're not leaving." Thaklon's expression changed from amusement to rage. "Then you will die with the rest of the criminals." The transmission cut out. Warning alarms began to sound as the Krillian ships powered their weapons. 3 ships moving to intercept, Rodriguez reported. "Missile lock in 30 seconds. "Murphy, give me everything the engines have," Chen ordered. "Torres, get ready for casualties. Rodriguez, plot us a course through their formation." "Through?" Rodriguez asked. "Captain, that's suicide," Chen smiled grimly. "Maybe. But we're not running away from people who need help." The Defiance Rest accelerated toward the Krillian ships like a missile. Its industrial engines, designed to push massive loads through asteroid fields, drove the converted hauler forward at a speed that should have been impossible for a ship its size. The first Krillian vessel fired a spread of missiles. Chen waited until the last possible second, then used the ship's maneuvering thrusters in a way that violated every safety regulation in the book. The Defiance Rest twisted sideways and dove beneath the missile barrage, its hull groaning under forces it was never designed to handle. "Return fire," Chen ordered. The ship's mining lasers, never meant for combat, lanced out at the nearest Krillian vessel. The beams were designed to cut through solid rock, and the enemy's shields flared and failed under the unexpected assault. Armor plating glowed red, then white, then melted away. But the real surprise came when Murphy activated the mining charges. Chen's crew had learned to fight in the asteroid fields, where a single mistake could kill everyone aboard. They knew how to use their tools as weapons, how to turn industrial equipment into instruments of destruction. The shaped charges that normally blasted apart space rocks now hammered into the Krillian ships with devastating effect. The first enemy, vessel, crippled by the laser strikes, took a direct hit from a mining charge and broke apart in a ball of fire. The second ship tried to ram the human vessel, only to find that Chen had already moved. The Defiance Rest spun around its own axis, bringing its weapons to bear on the Krillians' unprotected engines. On the Zelani station, Dr. Vexhai watched the impossible battle through a damaged observation port. The primitive-looking human ship moved like nothing he had ever seen. It fought like a wild animal, using tactics that no military academy would teach. It seemed to ignore its own safety completely, taking risks that should have destroyed it a dozen times over. The humans rammed one Krillian ship, using their own hull as a weapon. They fired mining lasers at point-blank range, accepting damage, to themselves to ensure their shots hit home. They moved through space like they were flying through an atmosphere, using their thrusters in ways that defied logic. 2 Krillian ships were dead. 2 more were retreating, their hulls cracked and bleeding atmosphere. The remaining 3 were regrouping, trying to understand what they were fighting. Thackalon's voice echoed across all frequencies. What are these creatures? What world breeds such madness? Chen's ship was damaged, its hull scarred, and its engines running on auxiliary power. But it was still moving, still fighting. The human captain opened a channel to the station. This is Captain Chen. We're coming aboard to render assistance. Prepare for emergency docking. But on the station, the Zilani scientists were not preparing for rescue. They were hiding. Dr. Vexhai had seen the humans fight. He had watched them destroy ships 3 times their size using nothing but courage and improvised weapons. He had seen them accept terrible damage to themselves to save strangers they had never met. And he was terrified. The Zilani had spent centuries studying the galaxy's species. They knew about high-gravity worlds and the creatures that evolved on them. They had read about species that practiced warfare as a way of life, but they had never encountered anything like these humans. These beings fought like they had nothing to lose. They took risks that should have been impossible. They seemed to feel no fear, no hesitation, no concern for their own survival. To the peaceful, fragile Zilani, they looked like monsters. They're coming aboard, Melthan whispered. Her crystalline skin was pale with terror. What do we do? Vexahai sealed the laboratory doors and activated the emergency barriers. Around the station, other research teams were doing the same thing. They had escaped the Krillian raiders only to face something that might be even worse. The humans had answered their distress call. They had fought to save the station. They had risked their lives for complete strangers. And the Zilani, in their fear and ignorance, saw them as just another threat to survive. The docking bay doors opened with a hiss of escaping air. Heavy footsteps echoed through the corridors as the human rescue team came aboard. Their voices were harsh and loud, speaking in tones that the station's computers struggled to translate. Dr. Vexhai pressed his face against the observation window and got his first clear look at humanity. They were enormous, even the smallest. Of them was twice his height and 10 times his weight. Their bodies were thick with muscle and covered in scars. They moved with the easy confidence of apex predators, their heavy boots leaving dents in the station's delicate floor panels. Their leader was a female with graying hair and metal parts replacing her left arm. She carried devices that could have been medical equipment or weapons. When she spoke, her voice carried the authority of someone used to being obeyed. Spread out and search for survivors, she ordered. Watch for structural damage. This place looks ready to fall apart. The humans began moving through the station with mechanical efficiency. They sealed atmospheric leaks, stabilized damaged sections, and searched for signs of life. Their methods were rough and direct, but they were effective, and they were trying to help. Dr. Vexhai watched them work and felt his worldview cracking like crystal under pressure. These creatures had traveled across space to answer a distress call from strangers. They had fought an impossible battle to save people they had never met. They were risking their lives to rescue beings who were now hiding from them in terror. What kind of species answered cries for help with such dedication? What kind of monsters fought so hard to save others? The questions had no answers that made sense, not yet. Dr. Vexhai watched the humans move through his station like giants in a house of glass. Every step they took seemed too heavy, every gesture too powerful. When one of them pushed aside a fallen beam that would have taken 6 Zilani to move, Vexhai's crystalline skin flickered with fear. The human leader, the one called Chen, stood in the main corridor studying a damaged wall panel. She held a device that beeped and flashed with different colored lights. When she spoke, her voice echoed through the station's communication system. This is Captain Chen to all survivors. We are here to help. Please respond if you can hear this message. Vexhai's assistant, Melthan, pressed herself against the laboratory wall. Her tall, thin body trembled like a flower in a storm. They sound so aggressive, she whispered. Even when they say they want to help. Other Zilani voices came through the internal communication network. Scientists throughout the station reported the same thing. The humans were everywhere, their heavy footsteps shaking the delicate structures. They carried tools that could have been weapons. Their voices were harsh and loud, but they were also doing something unexpected. They were fixing things. Vexhai watched through the security feeds as a human with mechanical arms welded a hull breach closed. The bright flame of his torch made the Zilani scientist recoil, but the repair was perfect. Another human was rerouting power cables, her thick fingers working with surprising gentleness on the station's delicate systems. "Structural integrity is holding," reported one of the humans. "But we've got injured beings in Section C." This voice was different, softer. Vexhai switched the security feed to Section C and saw something that made him forget his fear for a moment. A human female with short brown hair was kneeling beside 3 wounded Zilani. Her hands, which looked strong enough to crush crystal, moved with infinite care as she examined their injuries. She spoke to them in gentle tones, even though they could not understand her words. "Easy there," the human said. "You're going to be okay. I'm a doctor." One of the wounded Zilani, a young researcher named Kailvar, tried to pull away from the human's touch. His broken arm hung at an impossible angle, and blue blood seeped from cuts across his delicate skin. But when the human's hands touched him, the pain seemed to fade. "My name is Torres," the human said. She showed him a small device covered in lights. "This is a medical scanner. I need to see how badly you're hurt." Kailvar did not understand the words, but he understood the tone. This creature, this monster from a death world, was trying to heal him. Dr. Vexhai made a decision that would change everything. He unlocked the laboratory door. "Doctor, what are you doing?" Melthan called out in panic. "Something I should have done an hour ago," Vexhai replied. He stepped into the corridor just as Captain Chen rounded the corner. The human stopped when she saw him. Her dark eyes studied his crystalline features, his tall, thin frame, his glowing blue skin. For a moment, neither of them moved. Then Chen slowly raised her hands, palms open in what Vexhai hoped was a peaceful gesture. "Are you in charge here?" she asked. The station's computer struggled to translate her words into musical Zilani speech. "I am Dr. Vexhai, senior researcher," he replied. His voice came out as harsh sounds that the human's translator turned into something she could understand. Chen nodded. "Captain Sarah Chen, Earth Merchant Marine, we received your distress call. How many people are on this station?" 200 researchers, Vexhai said. "The Krillians killed 17 during the initial attack. Many others are injured." "We'll help with the wounded," Chen said. "My medic is already working on it. But first I need to understand what happened here. Why did the Krillians attack a research station?" Vexhai hesitated. The cure for the withering plague was the most important discovery in galactic history. Could he trust these strange, violent creatures with such knowledge? But then he remembered how they had fought the Krillians, how they had risked their lives to answer a distress call from strangers, how their medic was treating his people with such gentle care. "We discovered something," he said. "A cure for the withering plague." Chen's expression changed. "The disease that's been killing billions across Alliance space? Yes. We found it in the bacteria that live in this system's gas giant. But someone wants to stop us from sharing the cure. They hired the Krillians to destroy our research." Chen was quiet for a long moment. "Someone wants the plague to continue?" "It appears so. The Krillians were not here to steal our work. They were here to destroy it completely." The human captain's face grew dark with anger. Vexhai instinctively stepped back, remembering that he was talking to a predator from a death world. But the anger was not directed at him. "How many people have died from this plague?" Chen asked. "Billions. Entire worlds have gone silent. The Alliance estimates that half the galaxy's population could be dead within a year if we cannot stop it." Chen activated her communication device. "Torres, how are the wounded?" The medic's voice came back immediately. "Stable, Captain. But these people are incredibly fragile. Their bones are like glass, and their blood doesn't clot like ours. I'm having to improvise most of my treatments. Can you help them?" "I think so. Their physiology is different, but the basic principles are the same. Give me a few hours and I should have them back on their feet." Chen turned back to Vexhai. "My medic says she can help your people, but I need to ask you something important. Do you have the plague cure here on the station?" Vexhai nodded slowly. All our research is in the central laboratory. The bacteria samples, the genetic analysis, the treatment protocols. Everything needed to synthesize the cure. And the Krillians wanted to destroy all of it? Yes. They were systematic about it. They were not raiders looking for profit. They were killers hired to commit genocide. Chen's communication device beeped with an incoming message. She listened for a moment, then her expression grew grim. Captain, Rodriguez's voice came through clearly. I'm picking up new contacts on long-range sensors. Looks like a fleet heading our way. Mixed Alliance and Krillian vessels. How long? Until they arrive? Chen asked. 4 hours, maybe 5. Chen looked at Vexhai. Doctor, how long would it take to copy all your research data? Several hours at minimum. The files are enormous, and our computer systems were damaged in the attack. Then we have a problem, Chen said. Because I don't think that fleet is coming to rescue you. Vexhai felt his crystalline heart skip a beat. What do you mean? If someone hired the Krillians to destroy your research, they probably have contacts in the Alliance government. That fleet might be coming to finish what the raiders started. The implications hit Vexhai like a physical blow. The Alliance was supposed to protect its member worlds. The thought that someone within their own government might be working to suppress the plague cure was almost impossible to accept. But millions are dying, he whispered. How could anyone want the plague to continue? Chen's expression was grim. Doctor, in my experience, there's always someone who profits from other people's suffering. The question is, what are we going to do about it? We? Vexhai asked. My crew didn't come all this way just to watch you die, Chen said. If you're willing to trust us, we'll help you get that cure to the people who need it. Vexhai looked at this strange, violent creature from a death world. Everything about her should have terrified him. She was too big, too strong, too aggressive. Her people fought like demons and took risks that no sane being would consider. But she had answered his distress call. She had fought impossible odds to save his station. Her medic was treating his wounded with infinite care, and now she was offering to risk her life again to save billions of people she had never met. What do you need from us? Vexhai asked. Chen smiled, and for the first time, Vexhai saw warmth instead of predatory menace in her expression. Help us understand your research, she said, and trust us to do what we do best, which is survive impossible situations and protect people who need help. Behind them, Torres's voice echoed through the corridors as she worked on the wounded Zelani. Her tone was gentle but firm, the voice of someone who had treated injuries in dangerous places and knew how to inspire confidence in her patients. That's it. You're doing great, she was saying. Just hold still while I set this bone. I know. It looks scary, but I've done this 1,000 times. Vexhai listened to the human medic's voice and made a decision that would change the fate of the galaxy. He activated his security codes and unlocked the central laboratory. Come, he said, to Captain Chen. Let me show you how to save billions of lives. The central laboratory was unlike anything Captain Chen had ever seen. Curved walls pulsed with soft blue light, and holographic displays showed complex molecular structures floating in midair. Dr. Vexhai moved through the space like a dancer, his crystalline fingers activating controls that responded to his touch with musical chimes. This is our primary research data, he said, gesturing to a display that showed billions of microscopic organisms. The bacteria from Kepler 442b's atmosphere. They contain genetic sequences that can neutralize the withering plague. Dr. Sarah, Kim, the Defiance Rest's medic and former military biochemist, studied the data with fascination. Her rough appearance stood in sharp contrast to the laboratory's elegant design, but her expertise was undeniable. Incredible, she murmured. The bacteria essentially rewrite the victim's genetic code, removing the modifications that make them vulnerable to the plague. But how do you deliver it to living patients? Vexhai activated another display. We have developed a treatment protocol using modified viral vectors. The cure can be administered through injection or aerosol dispersal. One dose provides immunity for life. Kim leaned closer, her scarred hands moving over the holographic controls with surprising gentleness. There's something else here, something you haven't mentioned. What do you mean? Vexai asked. The genetic modifications your bacteria make. They don't just cure the plague. They create resistance to dozens of other diseases. This isn't just a cure, Doctor. This is the key to making any species nearly immune to biological warfare. The implications hit both scientists at the same time. In the wrong hands, the research could be used to create new weapons instead of curing disease. In the right hands, it could protect the galaxy from biological threats for generations to come. That's why someone wants it destroyed, Chen said from behind them. Not because they want people to die from the plague, but because they don't want anyone to have this level of biological protection. Dr. Vexhai's crystalline skin flickered with understanding. A species with immunity to biological weapons would be impossible to control through disease. Any government that possessed this technology would have an enormous advantage. Which is why we need to make sure everyone has it, Kim said firmly. Medical advances should belong to all people, not just the powerful. Their conversation was interrupted by Rodriguez's voice over the communication system. Captain, that fleet is moving faster than expected. They'll be here in 2 hours, and there's something else. I'm picking up transmissions between the Alliance ships and the Krillians. They're coordinating their approach. Chen felt a familiar anger building in her chest. Throughout human history, there had always been people willing to profit from others' suffering. Seeing it happen on a galactic scale was somehow even worse. How long to copy all the research data? She asked. At least 3 hours, Vexhai replied. Our computer systems are still damaged from the Krillian attack. What about transmitting it? Kim asked. If we broadcast the cure to every world in the galaxy, no one could suppress it. The data is too large for standard communication channels, Vexhai said. It would take days to transmit everything, and it could be easily jammed or intercepted. Chen studied the holographic displays, her mind working through possibilities. What if we simplified it? Could you create a basic version of the cure that could be transmitted quickly? Kim and Vexhai exchanged glances. Theoretically, yes, the Zalani scientist said, but it would be much less effective. Maybe 30% immunity instead of full protection. 30% is better than 0, Chen said. And once people have the basic version, they can work on improving it. But the equipment needed to synthesize even the basic cure, Vexhai protested. Most worlds don't have the facilities for advanced genetic manipulation. Kim smiled grimly. Doctor, you're thinking like a scientist. I'm thinking like a field medic. We don't need perfect conditions to save lives. We need solutions that work with what people have. She began working with the holographic controls, her hands moving with the confidence of someone who had improvised medical treatments in impossible conditions. What are you doing? Vexhai asked. Adapting your cure for battlefield conditions, Kim replied. Instead of using advanced viral vectors, what if we used common bacterial cultures that most worlds already have? Instead of requiring perfect genetic modification, what if we created a treatment that works with existing medical equipment? Vexhai watched in amazement as the human medic redesigned months of careful research in minutes. Her approach was crude, by Zalani standards, but it was brilliant in its simplicity. This could work, he said slowly. The immunity would be temporary, requiring booster treatments every few months, but it could be produced on any world with basic medical facilities. How quickly could we transmit this simplified version? Chen asked. 20 minutes, Vexhai said. Maybe less. Then that's what we do, Chen decided. We broadcast the basic cure to every world in the galaxy before that fleet arrives, but their plan was interrupted by a new voice on the communication channel. The transmission came from the approaching fleet, and the speaker's tone was cold and official. Attention, unidentified vessel. This is Admiral Korath of the Alliance. Third Fleet. You are ordered to surrender immediately and prepare to be boarded. Any resistance will be met with deadly force. Chen recognized the voice of authority when she heard it. This was not a rescue mission. This was a military operation designed to silence witnesses and destroy evidence. Captain Chen, Vexhai said quietly, you should leave. Take your ship and go. This is not your responsibility. Chen looked at the Zalani scientist, then at Dr. Kim, who was still working frantically to simplify the cure data. Around them, the elegant laboratory hummed with the sound of computers processing information, that could save billions of lives. "Doctor," she said, "has anyone ever told you that humans are really bad at walking away from fights? But you cannot win against an alliance fleet," HFY protested. "Your ship is damaged and you are outnumbered 50-1. "Maybe," Chen said, "but we don't have to win. We just have to buy enough time for you to transmit that cure." She activated her communication device. "All hands, this is the captain. We have 20 minutes to make sure the galaxy gets the cure for the withering plague. After that, we're going to have company. Anyone who wants to leave can take a shuttle and go. No questions asked." The response came back immediately from 43 different voices. "We're with you, Captain." Chen smiled. Her crew had followed her from the dangerous mining operations of the outer system to the even more dangerous work of independent freight running. They were not heroes. They were not soldiers. They were just people who had learned to stick together when things got bad, and things were about to get very bad indeed. "Rodriguez," she ordered, "start transmitting Dr. HFY's simplified cure data on all frequencies. If anyone tries to jam us, switch channels and keep transmitting. Torres, how are the wounded Zelani?" "Stable and mobile, Captain. These people are tougher than they look." "Murphy, I need you to rig every piece of mining equipment we have for remote detonation. If we're going down, we're taking some of them with us." "Aye, Captain. Already started." Chen turned back to HFY and Kim. "Keep working on that data simplification. Every minute we buy you is another world that might receive the cure." The Abai Zelani scientist looked at her with an expression of wonder. "Captain Chen, why are you doing this? Your species is not even a member of the Alliance. This plague does not threaten your world." Chen thought about all the people she had lost over the years. Friends killed in mining accidents because help arrived too late. Good people who died because no one was willing to take risks to save them. "Doctor," she said, "where I come from, when someone calls for help, you answer. It doesn't matter if you know them, it doesn't matter if it's dangerous. You answer because that's what people do for each other, even if it costs you everything." Chen looked around the laboratory where human and Zelani scientists worked together to save a galaxy that barely knew humans existed. Outside, an alliance fleet was approaching with orders to destroy them all. In 20 minutes, her ship would be outgunned and outnumbered by enemies who should have been allies. "Doctor," she said, "sometimes the right thing to do is also the hardest thing to do. That doesn't make it any less right." The transmission began, carrying the simplified plague cure to every inhabited world in the galaxy. In communication centers across space, technicians received the data and began the process of synthesizing treatments that could save millions of lives. And in the depths of space, a fleet of warships accelerated toward a damaged research station, where humans and Zelani worked together to prove that sometimes the most unlikely heroes are exactly what the galaxy needs. The Alliance fleet dropped out of hyperspace like a wall of death. 18 warships, their hulls gleaming with weapon ports and shield generators. At their head flew the heavy cruiser Righteous Fury, Admiral Korath's flagship. The remaining Krillian vessels took position alongside the Alliance ships, their alliance now open for all to see. Captain Chen watched from the bridge of the Defiance Rest as the overwhelming force spread out to surround the research station. Her ship looked like a child's toy compared to the military vessels arrayed against them. "Transmission complete," Rodriguez reported. "The cure data has been sent to 4,000 worlds across the galaxy." "Any responses?" Chen asked. "Coming in now, Captain. Medical centers on dozens of worlds are confirming receipt. They're already beginning production of the simplified cure." Chen nodded with satisfaction. Whatever happened next, the galaxy would have a fighting chance against the withering plague. The main screen flickered as an incoming transmission forced its way through their communications. Admiral Korath's face appeared, his reptilian features showing cold calculation. The Krillian admiral was old and scarred, his scales bearing the marks of countless battles. "Captain Chen," he said, somehow making her name sound like a curse. "You have interfered with a legitimate Alliance military operation. Surrender immediately and prepare to be taken into custody." "On what charges?" Chen replied. "Piracy, terrorism, and theft of classified research materials. You will be tried under Alliance military law." Chen almost laughed. "Admiral," we answered, a distress call, and provided medical assistance to wounded civilians. "Since when is that a crime?" "Since you stole classified plague research and transmitted it across the galaxy without authorization," Korath snapped. "That data could be used to create biological weapons. Or it could save billions of lives," Chen replied, "which is exactly what it's going to do." Korath's expression grew even colder. "You have 30 seconds to surrender, human. After that, my ships will open fire." The transmission ended. Chen looked around her bridge at the faces of her crew. They were scared, but they were not running. 43 people who had chosen to stand between an Alliance fleet and the right thing to do. "All stations prepare for combat," Chen ordered. "This is going to get rough." But before the Alliance ships could fire, something unexpected happened. 3 of the vessels broke formation and moved away from the main fleet. "Captain," Rodriguez said in amazement, "I'm receiving transmissions from those ships. They're refusing to attack us." The main screen showed the bridge of an Alliance destroyer. The captain was a tall, blue-skinned humanoid with golden eyes. When he spoke, his voice carried the authority of someone used to making difficult decisions. "This is Captain Veltar, of the destroyer Swift Justice. Admiral Korath, I cannot in good conscience fire upon beings who have just saved my homeworld from the plague. My medical officers confirm that the cure data is genuine and effective." 2 more ships declared their withdrawal from the attack. Their captains cited the same reason. The humans had just provided a cure that would save millions of their people. Admiral Korath's face appeared on the screen again, this time twisted with rage. "All defecting vessels will be court-martialed for mutiny. The humans are criminals and must be destroyed." But his remaining ship seemed less certain now. The simplified plague cure was already being distributed across the galaxy. Medical reports were coming in from dozens of worlds, confirming that the treatment was working. It was hard to justify attacking the people who had just saved billions of lives. War Chief Thaklon's voice cut through the confusion. "Enough talk. My ships will finish what we started." The remaining Krillian vessels opened fire without waiting, for Alliance support. Their weapons lit up space with deadly energy, all aimed at the small human ship and the research station. But Chen had spent 20 years working in asteroid fields, where survival depended on quick thinking and quicker reflexes. The Defiance Rest spun away from the incoming fire, using the research station's structure to shield itself from the worst of the attack. "Murphy, activate the mining charges," Chen ordered. The chief engineer's fingers danced over his controls. Throughout the station, shaped charges that had been disguised as repair equipment suddenly activated. Explosions tore through the facility's superstructure, sending debris flying in all directions. But the debris was not random. Murphy had calculated each blast to send chunks of metal and crystal toward the attacking ships. The Krillian vessels found themselves flying through a cloud of improvised shrapnel moving at tremendous speed. One ship took a piece of the station's communication array through its bridge. Another had its engines disabled by a fragment of laboratory equipment. The surviving vessels pulled back, suddenly wary of the humans' unconventional tactics. "Return fire," Chen ordered. The Defiance Rest's mining lasers reached out like fingers of death, targeting the damaged Krillian ships. The beams, designed to cut through solid rock, tore through hull plating and armor with ease. One vessel exploded in a ball of fire. Another lost power and began drifting helplessly. But Thaklon's flagship was still intact, and the war chief was beyond reason now. His ship accelerated toward the human vessel, intent on ramming it into scrap metal. Chen watched the massive Krillian warship bearing down on them and made a decision that would become legend throughout human space. "All hands, abandon ship," she ordered. "Get to the escape pods." "Captain, what are you doing?" Torres called out. "Something stupid," Chen replied. "Rodriguez set collision course for Thaklon's ship. Murphy, overload the engines on my mark." "Captain, you can't." Dr. Vexhi's voice came through the communication system. "You've already done enough." Chen looked at the research station, where Zilani scientists were evacuating to escape pods. These gentle crystalline beings had discovered the cure that would save the galaxy. They deserved to live to see the results of their work. "Doctor," she said, "take care of that cure. Make sure it reaches everyone who needs it. Captain Chen, HFY's voice was filled with emotion. I do not understand your species. You risk everything for people you have never met. That's what makes us human, Chen replied. The Defiance Rest accelerated toward Thaklon's flagship like a missile. The Krillian war chief's face appeared on the screen one last time, his expression showing shock as he realized what the human captain intended. You are insane, he said. Yeah, Chen agreed. We get that a lot. The two ships collided in an explosion that lit up the entire system. The Krillian flagship broke apart under the impact, its hull cracking like an eggshell. The Defiance Rest's engines overloaded a split second later, adding their fury to the destruction. But Chen and most of her crew had escaped in time. Their life pods scattered through space, picked up by the Alliance ships that had refused to fight them. 6 months later, Dr. HFY stood before the Alliance Medical Council on Centauri Prime. The elegant chamber was filled with representatives from across the galaxy, all come to witness the presentation of the complete withering plague cure. The treatment has now been distributed to over 10,000 worlds, he reported. Infection rates have dropped by 90% galaxy-wide. The plague has been effectively contained. The audience erupted in applause, but HFY raised his crystalline hand for silence. However, he continued, we must remember who made this possible. The humans of the merchant vessel Defiance Rest answered a distress call from strangers. They fought impossible odds to protect our research. Their captain gave her life to ensure that the cure reached those who needed it. In the audience, Captain Sarah Chen shifted uncomfortably in her seat. The injuries from the explosion had taken months to heal, and she still walked with a slight limp. But she was alive, and more importantly, so were most of her crew. Today, HFY announced, the Alliance Council grants Captain Chen and her crew the Medal of Valor, the first ever awarded to a non-member species. But more than that, we offer Earth immediate membership in the Alliance, with a special designation. The chamber fell silent as the Council's decision was read aloud. Humanity is hereby classified as a guardian species, charged with responding to distress calls throughout Alliance space. Their merchant marine and exploration fleets are granted authority to act in emergency situations, regardless of political boundaries. Chen stood as the medal was placed around her neck. The weight of it seemed symbolic of something larger than personal honor. Captain Chen, the council leader said, do you accept this responsibility on behalf of your species? Chen looked out at the assembled representatives of hundreds of worlds. These beings had learned to see humans not as Deathworld monsters, but as protectors who answered calls for help. We accept, she said simply. Later, as she prepared to board her new ship, the Zilani's Honor, Chen received a message on her personal communicator. It was from Rodriguez, who had taken command of a new rescue vessel operating in the outer colonies. Captain, his message read, just picked up another distress call. Unknown species, system at the edge of charted space. Looks like they're under attack by raiders. My crew's ready to respond, but thought you'd want to know. Chen smiled as she looked at the star charts showing dozens of human ships scattered across the galaxy. Earth's merchant marine and exploration fleets had found their calling, answering distress calls that came from the darkness between the stars. Somewhere out there, people were in trouble. People were calling for help. And when they did, humans would answer. It was what they did. It was what made them human. The SOS had been meant for allies, but the Deathworlders had arrived instead, and the galaxy was better for it.